I wanted to give you a message that I gave to the Seventh-day Adventists in Madagascar. I don't know if you know about Madagascar. We have quite a few Adventists over there. And Brother Ratzer, who's now vice president of Weimar, was over there as division president for 11 years. Now, he's such a strong vegetarian, he was sure everybody there was vegetarians. They aren't. Now, they believe in the spirit of prophecy 100%. I had 625 young people, leaders, at a meeting. I handed out a questionnaire. They all believe in the spirit of prophecy 100%. If you drink a cup of coffee, you are no longer an Adventist. That's clear. But they hadn't heard about the vegetarian diet. Now, the book Counsels on Diet Foods is there in the conference office in French. Only 20% of our church members know French. So nobody had read this. 3 of the choir members said to me, "Are you vegetarian?" I said, "Yes." They were amazed. They weren't vegetarians. So I said to Brother Ratzer, "You don't understand these people even though you grew up here. You don't realize they don't have your views. They are not vegetarians. They don't understand it." So we decided I'll write a paper, then publish it, and spread it around the island. This is the paper. But those Seventh-day Adventists believe in the spirit of prophecy 100%, only they haven't heard what she said about the vegetarian diet. Now, Christ knew that in order to carry out the plan of salvation, he must begin the work of redemption just where the ruin began. So what was his first temptation in the wilderness? Appetite. Turn these stones into bread. Christ took up the work of redemption just where the ruin began. The same is true of our experience. We are to begin the work of return just where the work of redemption is so keenly felt. Where have you started your plan of redemption? What have you changed in your appetite? The work of health reform is the Lord's means of lessening suffering in our world. Now, we understand that. And purifying his church. Have you ever heard a sermon given on how health reform is going to purify your church? Does our church need to be purified? Is health reform a part of it, doing it? Yeah, it is. And we don't talk about that side of it. Among those who are waiting for the coming of the Lord, meat eating will eventually be done away. Flesh will cease to form a part of their diet. Are you waiting for the Lord to come? Then what about your diet? The prophecy is now being fulfilled. Actually, the Bible is clear that if we do eat clean meat, it should be kosher. Leviticus 3:17, no fat or blood. What's wrong with the fat and the blood? Yeah. It's the heme iron in that blood there, the iron in the blood of the animal that you eat, that increases your risk of type 2 diabetes, increases your risk of a heart attack, increases your risk of intestinal cancer.
So how do you get the blood out?
How do they get the blood out? It's pretty hard. The old way, the kosher way, is you cut the neck of the animal, let the heart beat, but hang it up by its legs and let the heart pump all the blood out as far as you can. Then when that's done, you cut off all the fat you can, and the rest of it, you put in a water thing and try to get the water to help to get it out. They work hard. Kosher.
So you cut the throat of the animal while he's still alive?
Yeah.
Okay.
The animal's still alive, hanging up there, heart still pumping, trying to pump all that blood out. This is kosher way of doing it. We have very few kosher people, butchers anymore. So we don't have it much anymore. So the Jewish people are recommending, since we don't have these kind of butchers anymore, that you all be vegetarians.
I have a Muslim friend that I work with. A Muslim friend.
I can't hear her.
Fresh, the papaya fresh in Fresno.
Translate for me, Pete.
Said it's selling the good meat.
I didn't hear it. Can you translate?
She said that she has a Muslim friend that butchers the animal halal style, and so she was recommending a place here in Fresno.
The papaya fresh.
Papaya fresh.
Okay. Now, this meat question is a big question. I was up in a conference camp meeting. Elder Pastor was conference president, West Virginia. At the end of the camp meeting, he had all the ministers stood up front, or sat up front, along with me. And we answered questions. And we were lined up in a row there. The question came in on that end. Here's 3 ministers, and then me at this end with nobody beyond me. I saw a question come into the first minister. He unraveled a little paper, read it, put it back together again, and gave it to the next pastor.
May I interrupt for just a minute? For the purposes of live streaming, if you have a question, please raise your hand and wait for the microphone to come to you so that those on the live stream can hear your question and the answer.
Then the second pastor, he opened it up, read it, folded it up again, and passed it to the next pastor. He did the same thing, passed it to me. I was at the end of the line. I had no pastor to give it to. What was the question? Is it a sin to eat meat? That was the question. They didn't want to answer. Oh, I said, you know, that's such a simple question. The Bible's so clear on it in James. To him who knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. I didn't say another word. I would have been in trouble had I said any more. But you know, the Lord put that in my head right at that moment. I know the Lord was with me in that instant. Now, let me give you another experience. In the Philippines, Story Proctor and I were asked to come over there and teach them how to do vegetarian cooking school. We got there, and we started our program, but there were a group of very straight-laced Adventists that had discovered one of the conference presidents was eating meat. And what about this meat issue? They stopped going to church. They had church in their homes. They recommend all the church members don't go to the Adventist church because the conference president's eating meat. But just have church in your home.
I apologize again. Those on the live stream are asking that we hold all questions until you finish your presentation, and then we can ask the questions.
Anyway, it's very exciting. It was Friday night, and Story Proctor wasn't feeling well. He said, John, it's your night tonight. Now, the minister who had invited us, a Filipino man, came to me. He said, John, the brethren are worried whether you're going to join that group that says you shouldn't go to our churches. They're worried what you're going to say about this vegetarian diet. So you got to say it tonight. You got 3 hours with them. You got to talk about it. They want to hear what you're going to say. I didn't have the least idea what to say. I picked up my old trusted guide called Counsels on Diet and Foods. Probably read it 100 times. Didn't expect to find anything new in it, but I started flipping the pages one at a time. I got to page 401. That's a long way through. It took me a long time to get that far. And I found out exactly what I should say. In one paragraph, it told me everything I should say. I'm going to give it to you shortly. Okay, but let's continue with this. The Word of God in His law is binding upon every intelligent mind. The truth for this time, the third angel's message, is to be proclaimed with a loud voice, meaning with increasing power, as we approach the great final test. Now, what is the final test? Sabbath versus Sunday, right. Then this test, Sabbath versus Sunday, must come to the churches in connection with true medical missionary work. How's the Sabbath Sunday thing have to do with that? Medical missionary work of the church, see? A work that has the great physician to dictate and preside in all it comprehends. Under the great head, we are to present God's word requiring obedience to the system of Bible truth, which is a system of authority and power, convincing and converting the conscience. The demand of the word to obedience is a life and death question. Sabbath and Sunday, or the health laws, moral laws, which we talked about last night. They're moral laws. Obedience to both is important. That's why Sister White says the violation of one of God's natural laws is just as bad as a violation of one of the 10 Commandments. Because those health laws made in heaven when we were created, there are moral laws, not legal laws. Legal law can be changed, moral law can't. Sunday ends up the legal law, it can be changed. Sabbath is a moral law made in heaven, unchangeable. Okay? We all know that the original diet given to man was a vegetarian diet. Seeds, grains, not even vegetables. Vegetables were the food for the animals. Did you realize that? We stole the animals' diet. Now, we were allowed to eat vegetables after sin, and it's kind of interesting. In Genesis 3:15, you read all about this. Since there will be no death in heaven, nobody's going to kill an animal to eat it. The diet there will be vegetarian. Now, Daniel and his companions were raised vegetarians. Did you know that? They decided, as flesh meat had not composed their diet in the past, neither should it come into their diet in the future. And as the use of wine had been prohibited to all those who engaged in the service of God, they determined that they would not partake of it. Okay? Now, how old were these kids? 15 or 16 years of age? So these kids were brought up on the vegetarian program. Where'd they get it from? That was the original diet. But they had another problem. The king always asked a blessing before his meal, and addressing his idols as deity. They didn't think they should sit at a table where that was done. To sit at the table would be a dishonor to the God of heaven. Now, originally, the vegetarian diet was the diet of the Seventh-day Adventists in the beginning, the original diet of people. That was the diet. When did it change to where they had to be? After the flood. It changed. And the clean meats were allowed after the flood. But the flesh and the blood was not to be eaten. It has to be kosher. Okay? Now, I told you my experience in the Philippines. They want to know what I was going to say about the vegetarian diet. And I flipped through the pages of Councils of Diet Foods, got to page 401, and I found this paragraph. The Lord stopped my finger on that paragraph. I've had experience after experience where I know the Lord was in it. And so here's what we teach as Adventists from Councils on Diet Foods 401. While we do not make the use of flesh meat a test of church membership, a test. While we do not want to force anyone to give up its use, yet it is our duty to request that no minister of the conference shall make light of or oppose the message of reform on this point. If in the face of the light God has given concerning the effect of meat eating on the system, you will still continue to eat meat, you must bear the consequence. But do not take a position before the people that will permit them to think that it is not necessary to call for a reform in regard to meat eating, because the Lord is calling for a reform. The Lord has given us the work of proclaiming the message of health reform. And if you cannot step forward in the ranks of those who are giving this message, you are not to make this prominent in counterworking the efforts of your fellow laborers who are teaching health reform. You are out of order, working on the wrong side. Okay, so what are we to teach? That audience I had from the Far Eastern Division, almost 200 people, probably 98% non-vegetarian. And I was trying to teach them how to do vegetarian cooking school. So we had to bring up this. What's our stand? What was I to tell them? And the brethren at the division level were really worried about what I might say. Because of this group, conservatives, who said, don't go to the church because the conference president is a meat eater. They said, bring him to your home. Bring him to church through your home. Anyway, kind of experience. One of our conference leaders at that time was a very interesting man. He was not an Adventist, not a Christian, and he was going to public school, and he was afraid that people were sneaking in some unclean meat, some pork. He didn't want to eat pork. And that's all he was worried about. And he was afraid they were giving him some in his diet. And so he complained, and an Adventist boy said, you need to go to our college, the Adventist college down near southern Philippines. They don't have any meat. You'll be safe. So he did, and after 4 years, he became an Adventist. And a leader in the conference, ministerial director. A great fellow. The spirit of prophecy tells us who should not eat meat. Ministers. Let not any of our ministers set an evil example in the eating of flesh meat. That's an evil example. Can we possibly have confidence in ministers who at tables where flesh is served join with others in eating it? Who else? Physicians. Instruction has been given me that physicians who use flesh meat and prescribe it for their patients should not be employed in our institutions. Who else? Teachers. No man should be set apart as a teacher of the people while their own teaching or example contradicts the testimony God has given his servants to bear in regard to diet, for this will bring confusion. His disregard of health reform unfits him to stand as the Lord's messenger. Students would be better off if they never tasted meat. I mean, this is what the Lord is telling us through the spirit of prophecy. Children, meat should not be placed before our children. Everyone. Not an ounce of flesh meat should enter our stomach. She tells everybody. There's one group that's not going to be held responsible for this information. Who is it? Idiots. Idiots, she said, will not be responsible. I think the Lord does have a sense of humor. When the Lord tells the prophet, be sure you get that in there, the idiots are not responsible for this information, okay? Will you not go to heaven if you eat meat? Among those who are waiting for the coming of the Lord, meat eating will eventually be done away. Flesh will cease to form a part of their diet. Are you preparing for the Lord to come? Many who are now only half converted of the question of meat eating will go from God's people to walk no more with him. Those who are in a position where it is possible to secure a vegetarian diet, but who choose to follow their own preferences in this matter, eating and drinking as they please, will gradually grow careless of the instruction the Lord has given regarding other phases of the present truth, and will lose their perception of what is truth. They will surely reap as they have sown. We need to learn that indulged appetite is the greatest hindrance to mental improvement and soul sanctification. Okay? Why should we not eat the meat? Heart attack causes sudden death. They didn't have the term heart attack in those days, but it causes sudden death. That's heart attack. It causes cancer. It causes obesity. Look at this statement here. The liability to take disease is increased tenfold by meat eating. Have you heard that statement before? Many people have heard it but don't know where it is, so I got it down here. The flesh of dead animals causes 9/10 of the disease in our world. Muscles. I've been shown them that their meat diet, which was supposed to be essential, was not necessary, and that as they were composed of what they ate, brain, bone, and muscle were in an unwholesome condition because they lived on the flesh of dead animals. Health reform is a soul-winning aspect of the work of the church. When properly conducted, the health work is an entering wedge, making a way for other truths to reach the heart. When the third angel's message is received in its fullness, health reform will be given its place in the councils of the conference, in the work of the church, in the home, at the table, and in all of the household arrangements. Then the right arm will serve and protect the body. Well, in this church, what percent of the church are vegetarian? Have we ever done a survey? Find out, Brother Jensen? No. I think we should. We should know where the people are. If we want to move them from here to there, we got to know where their here is. Where are they? I asked Doug Batchelor, in your church here, now I'm a member of that church officially, I said, in your church here, what percent of your church members are vegetarian? He spouted off right back. 75%. I looked questioning at him, so he thought again, and he said 50%. I don't think it's that high. I don't think it's that high. I saw him one time ask all the members of the church to stand up. The visitors were supposed to keep seated. So all the church members stood up. Half of the church members, half of the audience stood up. That means the other half, they're Adventists, but not church members of that church. Now, Doug Batchelor has a unique way of doing things, different than most people. He's got a lot of Jewish blood in him. He's Jewish, you know. And they consider a member of their church everybody who sends them their money, their tithe, their offerings, even though they're so far away they can't come to his services. They'll see him on TV, but they can't come to the services. So 300 members of his 1,400 or so members are that kind who never attend there. Good way to raise offerings, treasurer. Good way to raise offerings. They're called members because they're supporting it financially. Which is exciting, exciting. Now, he got kind of pushed out of his church in central Sacramento because he didn't believe in women's ordination. And that bothered the brethren in the Pacific Union Conference. It bothered them. And the pressure was on him. So he's well acquainted with Elder Bohr. He and Elder Bohr are on the phone together often. But Doug Batchelor decided to leave that church location where he was in central Sacramento. And he went out further in the country, bought 70 acres of land, put up 2 big buildings, a church. Usually it's owned by the organized church. Not this one. This one is leased to the church. So they can't take it from him. And then he had another big building, which is his literature work, you know. He's very clever how he arranges things. In fact, his ministerial license doesn't come from the local conference. His ministerial license comes from Michigan. So he doesn't care how much the brethren think of him now locally, because it doesn't matter. They can't take his license from him. He's very clever how he's working around the edges of things. But I think we do need to have in his church a survey and see what percent are really vegetarian. He just assumes they are. Just like in Madagascar, Brother Ratsera was division president there, of that division where he was raised, for 11 years. And he thought they were all vegetarian, because he was. They weren't vegetarians. They didn't know we were supposed to be vegetarian. I spoke there on a Sabbath, an outdoor auditorium, to 50,000 people. I've never spoken to that many people in my life before one time, you know. Live people there. That's quite a few people at one time. But I was trying to give the people the idea that in Madagascar, the Adventist people were the ones who should be your health educator. I didn't know at that time they hadn't heard about meat, that they weren't vegetarian. I didn't know. But we learned quick thereafter that they were not vegetarians, most of them. And so I wrote this paper, which they were supposed to print over there and give to all the people. When properly conducted, health work is the entering wedge. It's the entering wedge. The Bible says we are to eat in due season for strength and not for drunkenness. I brought that in too because All the Adventists eat between meals. All the Adventists eat between meals. I am astonished to learn, Sister White said, that after all the light that has been given in this place, many of you eat between meals. You should never let a morsel pass your lip between regular meals. Nothing should be eaten between meals. No confectionery, nuts, fruit, or food of any kind. Okay? Now, there is a statement in the Spirit of Prophecy about clean and unclean meats. Genesis 9, 3-5. Anybody have their Bible with them? Genesis 9, 3-5. Look it up and see what it said. Genesis 9, 3-5. I read that time and again, and I wasn't sure what it meant. Genesis 9, 3-5. Dr. Mervyn Harding started the School of Public Health. His brother is Dr. Leslie Harding, got his PhD ministerial degree by studying 6 lines of Bible times, 6 languages of Bible times. And he came to me, he said, Dr. Scharffenberg, you health promoters should be using Genesis 9, 3-5. It tells you that if you eat meat, clean meat even, every time you kill an animal and eat it, you're going to shorten your life. So that's what that text means. I had a hard time in English to understand it. But he says, in the original, there's no question what it means. It means if you kill an animal to eat of it, every time you do it, it's going to shorten your life. And we know whether that's true or not, we know that's what happened. The first 10 patriarchs lived almost 1,000 years. The next 10, 300 years. It really dropped. Now, we're doing good to get to 80. Okay. Now, what do we know scientifically on the vegetarian diet? We want to live longer. That's number one. Studies by Loma Linda University. Gary Fraser from New Zealand, now retired in Australia. He showed that 48.6% of Adventist vegetarian men in California live to be 85 or older compared to the general population, you know. Those in the general population were only 19.5%. 48.6% versus 19.5%. Tremendous difference. Vegetarians just live a lot longer. How about the women? They live longer than the men. In the general population, 39.3% live to be 85 or older. But of the Adventist vegetarian women, 60.1% live to be 85 or older. Vegetarians live longer. You want to live longer? Be a vegetarian. This was a solid scientific study published by a book over there at Oxford University Press. When Gary Fraser was over there studying, he took a year leave of absence and went over there and did this. He had to pay for some of the time off at Loma Linda. I helped him get the money so he could do that. But this is very exciting that we have good scientific evidence that vegetarians are living longer because they have less disease. Now look at the next paragraph. Non-vegetarian men in their 40s had 4 times as many heart attacks as vegetarians did. Non-vegetarians had 3.6 times greater risk of diabetes being on their death certificates. Non-vegetarians had 2 to 2.5 times greater risk of being obese. Vegetarians had 40% less hypertension, half as much kidney disease, half the risk of cataracts, and half as much rheumatism. Meat use increases risk of colon cancer 88%, ovary cancer 66%, pancreatic cancer 2.5 times, as well as increasing prostate cancer. These are the scientific studies that are published. Now, the thing that I'm excited about is that the cardiovascular disease can be handled more by lifestyle, health habits, than by medicine. We've had a major breakthrough in this. You remember Pasteur came along with his flash studies and we learned about germs, germ theory. Very great advance in health. Fleming came along, discovered penicillin, another breakthrough in health. Now, in the 2020s, 2010, in the 2010 area, from then on, we have evidence that if you avoid 7 lifestyle factors that prevent heart disease, you can lower your heart attack 80%. You can lower your first stroke risk 80%. You can lower your risk of type 2 diabetes 88%. Isn't that something? Most of our doctors have never even heard of this. You remember Sister White talked against all these drugs? She said we shouldn't have any drugs in our sanitariums. She wished they had never gotten into the sanitarium business at all with those drugs. You understand why. Here, heart disease is killing more people than the next 5 leading causes of death combined. And what does the best thing better than any medicine? Lifestyle. And that's what Ellen White was trying to tell us years ago. And people just ignored it. I have some of the statements here that talk about it. We know that 80% of all myocardial infarctions could be prevented with simple lifestyle measures. The risk of type 2 diabetes was lowered by 88% by these same health behaviors. Now, another problem. In our country, the United States here, where we're so scientifically informed, we have 1 out of 14, or about 15% of the population has chronic kidney disease. Chronic kidney disease. Each year, kidney disease kills more people than breast cancer or prostate cancer. 90% of those who have kidney disease do not know it, as the doctor does not usually diagnose it until the blood creatinine level is elevated, which occurs in one of the later stages of the disease. There are 5 stages of kidney disease. With a lower protein intake, especially in the early stages of the disease, there may be as much as 32% reduction in kidney disease deaths. We want to cut down on kidney disease deaths? You live right. So what are these risk factors? Tobacco, alcohol, exercise every day, don't get overweight, keep your blood pressure down and your blood cholesterol down. These are the things that we can do which does better than any medicine could do. So we can lower cardiovascular disease 80%, diabetes 88%, by lifestyle without any medicine. A lot of our doctors don't know that. A lot of them don't know that. I went with my son to Hawaii a while back, where this dean of the medical school, UCLA or somewhere, was the lecturer on heart disease. He never mentioned this. Most of the studies were done on men. not women. When they did it just on women alone, the people who took the pills to lower their cholesterol died sooner than the ones who didn't take the pill. I don't think women should be given those statin pills. Okay? How about men? Well, scientists finally came out with new recommendations saying men who are 70 or older should not be on statins, regardless of their cholesterol level. And most doctors have never heard of this. But there it is, official recommendation. And they don't say much about the women, but I don't think women should be on it at all, because it increases their risk of dying. In 2 of the 3 studies, it increased the risk. Okay? Excessive protein. You know, they're trying to raise the amount of protein recommended. Some people are trying to do that right now. Just happening the last day or 2. Don't eat too much protein. The protein recommended amount is the same amount in all my lifetime. 0.8 of a gram per kilogram body weight is what it is. Always been that. More protein means more kidney disease. I've been to all these exercise specialists, and you go into their gym, and here on the way out, you see the box after box, high protein food. They're pushing it. It does increase muscle, but it increases kidney disease. They took a group of nurses, checked them out for their cholesterol levels. Then they took a subgroup of them and checked their bone marrow from the sternum here and found out who had the highest hemoglobin, most hemoglobin. The meat eaters had more hemoglobin, but they had about twice the risk of diabetes. Yeah, they had more hemoglobin, but diabetes. Sister White says if you're anemic, if your blood is running like water, you have to build it up. So you got to get iron somehow. So the iron from meat is more quickly absorbed. So the doctor recommends meat. And that's a mistake, because that increases the risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, heart attack, and stroke. That's not the way to go, okay? Now, I have here a few more little points. You want to have greater physical endurance? For the short-term endurance, high carbohydrate does it, not protein. You want to get more nutrition in the food you buy for the dollar spent? Now I have 2 colored pages back here, which shows you the studies that were done in the U.S. on the U.S. diet. It shows you how much vitamins you got, minerals you got from different kinds of diets. And I have here, where is it? Oh, here it is. Ascorbic acid, vitamin C. What gives you the most vitamin C for the dollar spent? Citrus fruit and tomatoes. Riboflavin, milk, protein, beans, and peanuts. Thiamine, potatoes, and it's pretty close to grains. Niacin, beans and peanuts. Vitamin A, green, yellow vegetables. Calcium, milk. Iron, beans and peanuts. So the best buys for the dollar, the 4 top food groups: to give you more nutrition for the dollar than anything else was potatoes and grains they tied, then beans and peanuts, and then the green yellow vegetables. Now you look at the foods which were the poorest buys for the dollar. Sugar. No vitamins or minerals, sugar. But just above sugar was meat and fish. Not that there's no good nutrition in meat and fish, but it's very costly. For the dollar spent, you aren't getting much. Okay? So vegetarian diet is better. Vegetarian diet is better. Another thing I have back here is showing you about heart disease. They're saying we should cut down on saturated fat. When they said cut down on meat and sugar, the American population was upset. So the Heart Association wanted to keep in good relations with the general population, changed it, said eat more fruits and vegetables. But they're still worried about the cholesterol problem. So they made another recommendation. Don't eat more than 6% of your calories from saturated fat. This tells you where the saturated fat is. Now, every fat has all kinds of fatty acids. They have saturated fat, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated. But some have a high amount of polyunsaturated. So the 5 that have the most are down at the bottom here. Coconut oil. Everybody says, that's a health food. No, that's high in saturated fat, coconut oil. There's 2 kinds of saturated fat in it. One doesn't cause much of a problem, the other does. And Gary Fraser tells me in the Pacific Islands, South Pacific Islands, the places where they use the most coconut, they have more heart attacks. Now I think of some of our islands out here towards Australia. What is that island now? The people are big people. They don't exercise much. Not Australia, not New Zealand. Samoa. There's another one. I was stopped by there, visited. But anyway, we had a lot of those people. They wear skirts. Huh? No, it's not Samoa. Huh? What's the island I'm trying to think? Huh? It's an island out there. And anyway, I asked all these well-dressed people in Doug Batchelor's church there, big people. I asked, they were trying to argue with me on this. That's all they use is coconut oil. And I said, you don't have any heart attacks or diabetes? Oh, yes, we have lots of that. Yeah, they do. They have lots of that. It's the way they're eating, okay? Coconut oil. Butter. Did you know that the Spirit prophecy said years ago we should not use butter? A lot of Adventists don't know that. But the Spirit of prophecy has said we should not use butter. Now the Heart Association says don't use butter. What about even milk? Milk has butter fat in it. Milk has butter fat in it. So if you use milk, the recommendation of the Heart Association is you use only low-fat or non-fat milk. No more than 1% fat, at least. You see 2% lots of time, but Heart Association says no more than 1% fat for the milk. Now, the palm oil, we don't grow palm oil here. We grow it in Malaysia. But we ship it here. They ship it here. You read the labels, it's in a lot of our foods. Lard, pork fat, That is really bad. Cottonseed oil is not good either. It's raised in this country, but we shouldn't use it for food. Now, peanut oil. Chinese like to cook with peanut oil. That's okay. Peanut oil. But look at these different oils. The bottom 5 we aren't to touch at all. But look at the yellow line. That's a monounsaturated fat. Oleic acid. That's what it means. We used to think it would neither raise nor lower serum cholesterol. Now we know it lowers serum cholesterol. Avocado is loaded with it. Avocado is great for lowering cholesterol, okay? So you can see that's easily obtained everywhere. Then there's 2 fatty acids that are essential. By essential, I mean you got to have them in your diet because your body can't make them. That's the blue and the green. The blue is linoleic acid. That's common. We can get that quite easily. But the green is a little hard to get. You have it in flaxseed. See? Flaxseed's high. Now, if I didn't know anything about fats, I would use canola oil, Canada oil. But knowing something about fat, I can go through each one of these, tell you why this one's good and that one's good, you know. But the flaxseed is, you got to grind it up. Otherwise, it'll go right through you, and you don't get the fat at all. But these are the foods you have to avoid to lower your heart attack rate 80%. Your rate of strokes, 80%. Your rate of diabetes type 2, 88%. It's cutting down on these saturated fats. Okay? Now, what else do I have here? I think that's the most important. We can eat the scientific recommendations more easily on the vegetarian diet. The latest position, not the latest, but a recent one on the vegetarian diet, the American Diabetic Association, American Dietetic Association, did make as a rule recommendations on all these kinds of things. And in 1909, July, there was an Adventist that got in making it, Winston Craig. And he was head of our nutrition department at Andrews University. They have now said, the dietitians agree, that a vegetarian diet is good. That is, it'll help to avoid a lot of disease. It's good for every age group. It's good for pregnant women, and it's good for everybody. It's good for kids, good for people who want to exercise. They agree to that, so I have that statement here too. Now, are there any questions any of you have on the vegetarian diet? If you're not a vegetarian, that's okay, except you need to learn how to be a vegetarian. You need to learn how to do it because it's better to be a vegetarian. So when people come into the church, a lot of them are non-vegetarian. We need to educate them how to be on a good diet, okay? Any question back here, Elder? Elder Jensen.
On the last page of your handout, you have several statements regarding problems with meat. I wish you'd go over that last page.
Okay.
I think that's got some really important information there. I was just looking ahead there.
Okay. Problems with meat.
Yeah.
Next to tobacco and alcohol, meat is the greatest single cause of disease and disability in the industrialized countries. Now, that's what Spirit of Prophecy told us. 10 times the disease rate. There's more evidence today for the truthfulness of this statement than when I first talked about it. Millions get sick around the world from infections due to animal food. Salmonella is common. As long as we're eating meat, we can never expect to get rid of salmonellosis. It's in there. When you're cutting through an animal's intestines, you're splattering that bacteria all through the animal, all over the meat. So that's a big problem. Shellfish is a major cause of hepatitis A. These infections are far-reaching economic effects for countries with limited incomes. Fresh fish, beef, and so on are highly perishable. Spoilage is high without refrigeration, and fuel to dry such is costly. Hot spices may camouflage the taste, but doesn't kill the bacteria. Grains and legumes can be stored and transported with far less danger. The cost to the U.S. in 1992 was estimated to be between $28 and $61 billion from the diseases produced as a result of consuming meat. That's from hypertension, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, gallbladder disease, foodborne illnesses, and obesity-related musculoskeletal disorders. So the question is, why is it that countries don't recommend it, vegetarian diet, when we have all this scientific evidence? In the United States, in 2015, the U.S. government every 5 years or 6 years gets a group of scientists to look at our diet and what we're recommending and update it to what it should be. And so they got this group in 2015, and all the scientists said, you should recommend a vegetarian diet to the whole U.S. population. It got to the desk of the head of the agriculture department, the head of the health department. They were the ones who were doing the study. And they said, oh no, that's too strict. We can't do that. Vegetarian diet plus some lean meat. But the scientists didn't add the lean meat. That was the non-scientist that added that. The scientists said vegetarian diet is to be recommended. Heart disease rate is so much higher. Adventist, the vegetarian diet, I said how they were living. The vegetarian ones are doing so well, living so much longer than the other people. The evidence is so strong. And the only question is, why isn't it that the government officials are promoting the vegetarian more to their general population? They're saying it, but quietly. But the evidence is wrong, scientifically. But heart disease, prostate cancer, meat increases the risk of prostate cancer. Colon cancer, yeah, a lot of cancer. It's terrible what it does. But I would say the heart disease and the cancer, meat increases both of them. Terrible. Kidney disease. Any other questions? But the one who's done the most studies on this is Gary Fraser, Australian, New Zealander. He's now retired in Australia, but he's the one that did the studies, published it in Oxford University Press in 2003 or so. Yes.
It's not a question, it's a statement. Another evidence that meat eating is not preferred is because it doesn't chew up.
It does what?
It doesn't chew up.
It doesn't chew up.
Vegetables chew up, it's turned to a liquid in your mouth. Nuts, fruit, but meat doesn't. Meat is just strings.
I remember eating a Thanksgiving Day dinner at my neighbor's house. We never ever had meat in our house, but the neighbor had a turkey, okay? and I had turkey on my plate, and I chewed it and couldn't chew it up. I poked my mother next to me. I said, what do I do with it? She said, spit it out. I have rarely tasted meat, but that was one of the 3 or 4 occasions where I did.
Could you address the differences between the vegan and the vegetarians? Like in
I can't.
lifespan?
I can't hear you.
Oh, can you touch base on the differences of lifespan and diseases with vegetarians and vegans?
Can you explain to me? I didn't hear it. My hearing is bad.
Compare the vegan diet to the
Com-
vegetarian
compared to what?
Vegan and vegetarian.
Oh, vegan and vegetarian. You know, I don't like the term vegan because it has religious connotations. In England, where it started in 1940 or so, it had no religious connotation. But when it started in 1960 by a good friend of mine, it did have vegetarian, or it had religious connotation because they published a booklet or magazine every month for the total vegetarians. And they were pushing it, but they named it something which had to do with religion. They were Hindu background, see. They did have me stay in their house once and got me into a debate with a Vanderbilt scientist. And it was quite interesting. It was meat versus non-meat. And I had a good lady that did all my PowerPoint lectures, you know, these things we put on the screen. And she did a good job of that. And the people at the end in the newspaper published everything I said and nothing the other guy had said. So I think I kind of won it. Okay.
Do you have any thoughts on the McDougall diet? And for the rest of you, that is a doctor, not Adventist, who published a few books about a vegetarian diet. He recommends that half
What's
of
that?
your intake be starches.
I didn't get what he's saying.
The McDougall diet. Dr. John McDougall?
I don't get what he's saying.
What about the McDougall diet?
McDougall died? Well, McDougall didn't even believe in God, but we got him changed in Hawaii. He almost got thrown out of the staff because he was putting on pregnant women on total vegetarian diet. But he was putting pregnant women on total vegetarian diet, no milk or eggs. And I was invited to Yamashura was the president in charge of that committee, OBGYN committee, and he invited me to the session. And towards the end, he said, now we have a nutritionist in our midst. Let's ask him what he thinks. And I said, I think you can do it if you know what you're doing. You can do a total vegetarian diet without milk or eggs. Okay, with pregnant women, everybody. McDougall did something for our hospital in Hawaii. He had a McDougall diet there, served regularly. They don't do it now. But he was okay. He's passed away. I know him very well because he didn't believe in God. And some Adventists persuaded him there was a God. You know, he finally believed in God. He was a good fellow. I liked him.